friends are since.
In this video, I'm going to share with you a track that I made the other day entirely on my modular system. I realised that this was something that I hadn't really done in a while. I was mostly using my Eurorack for kind of utility purposes and to use individual modules to add bits onto other tracks. So I sat down and recorded this thing and I really quite liked it, and I thought it was worth talking you through the patch or the kind of modules that I used to make the track, because that isn't necessarily immediately obvious, and I think the modular system can be a bit of a kind of weird grey dark cloud of uncertainty and obscurity if you're not familiar with how it all works. So I'm going to talk you through the various modules that I used, and then you can listen to the track and maybe it'll make more sense or maybe not, whatever. Alright, so this is my modular and I'm going to talk you through the various elements of the song. There are four main parts to it. There's a bass line, there are some drums, there's a vocal sample, and then there's some kind of swishy, swooshy effects and that kind of thing. You can ignore all of the patch cables that are connected at the moment. They're nothing to do with this particular composition. They're just in there because I was working on something else. Plus it makes it look kind of cooler, do you know what I mean? It gives it more authenticity. Don't look at the rat's nest. Anyway, going through the individual elements one by one. For the bass line, I used a Dixie 2 from IntelliGel. I took the sub output of that. In order to tune the thing, I used the autopilot module from, I think it's called autopilot, from Endorphin. This is fantastic because it automatically tunes your modules so you don't have to worry about doing it yourself, which is a huge pain in the arse. In terms of clocking everything, I took a clock out from my DAW which went into the multi-clock thing from ERM, which kept everything in sync. It comes into the Endorphin shuttle control here, which then spits out a whole bunch of different clocks and things, which went into the Pamela's workout, which then spat out over into this 4MS rotating clock divider, which you might be able to just see sneaking away in there. Now this gave me all my clocks and stuff that I needed. In terms of the actual sequence or sequencer, for the bass line, I used the Z8000 Matrix sequencer and programmer from Tip Top Audio. I like this because you can get some really wild results if you kind of modulate the start position and everything, but I didn't do that. I just got a fairly straightforward bass line. And to be honest, that is basically the bass line. There was nothing much more complicated than that. I did apply a wee bit of distortion or kind of excitement in Logic, but nothing from the modular. Now in terms of drums, it was fairly straightforward in the sense that I used a Squid Salmple from ALM. I used whatever the first bank was, which I think was a 909 bank of samples. I took clocks out of the aforementioned rotating clock divider, which gave me triggers for the various times, and I just plugged them in and found something that sounded good. I didn't overthink it, to be honest. Now this is where things get a wee bit more interesting. I took the mix output from the ALM Squid Salmple. I didn't take the individual outputs and process them as I would normally, and put it into the QuBit Data Bender, which is a brand new module that I just got, which basically kind of glitches up and corrupts your signal. So it has the kind of aesthetic of like a broken tape or a CD skip or something like that. And to be honest, when I heard the description of this module, which I think was something like circuit bent CD skipping, I was like, yes, that is exactly what I want. And this is actually proved to be one of my favourite modules. It is fantastic. It makes the drums all glitchy and weird and gives them a nice texture. So that's the kind of two main elements, the drums and the bass. And I recorded a couple of different loops, or I recorded actually a whole bunch of different things, and then I found a few loops within the cacophony of noise that I liked, and then I used that as the basis. Now the other things that were in here are a vocal sample, and I put that in the middle. That came from the radio thing, or sorry, the radio music module, which is basically, it just plays through a bunch of samples kind of like a radio transmitter might. It's not actually, or receiver I guess, it's not actually a radio receiver, it just plays samples like it is, and that's particularly cool. I ran that through a combination of the Data Bender again, the Arbhar Instruo, which is kind of hiding away down here. It's a granular sampler thing. Instruo make amazing modules, and you can find them at my friend signalsounds.com if you're curious. I believe they're the distributor for them globally. Anyway, they do really cool things. This is an amazing module. I did buy this, by the way. This isn't a sponsored video. But I then ran it all into a reverb, and I can't quite remember if it was the Pittsburgh Verbtronic or the Herb Verb from Make Noise, but it was one or the other. So that gives you the kind of middle part, which is a weird textured voice. Oh, I should have said actually, the bass line was quantized by this Penrose quantizer, which I actually built a long time ago, and it's kind of shocking that it actually works since I built it. Anyway, for the final kind of bit, which is the textural bit, the bits with the swoops and sweeps and all that kind of crap, I used an ataraxic translatron. I can't remember who makes this at the moment, so I'm going to have to go and check. But it's a really cool module. It kind of sounds like a dial-up modem, and this provided the kind of Pac-Man sound that you can hear in the track if you listen out. I think what I did in order to get that was I just used an LFO from Frequency Central here called Wave Runner, and I ran that into it and just recorded a bunch of weird bits and pieces. So that's the pitch explanation. Hopefully that gives you a wee bit of an insight into what you're actually hearing. This song or track or whatever you want to call it is kind of unusual for my modular stuff in that it's not just bleepy bloopy crap. It's kind of actually sounds like a track that I would want to listen to, and I think it sounds alright. I'm trying to think of different ways to kind of explain what I'm doing with the modular. It's quite difficult to know what is interesting or what isn't, or what's useful or what isn't, and I probably shouldn't give a fuck about that, but people do ask about the modular all the time, and I think it's one of those things where people aren't quite sure how you could actually write music on it that isn't just kind of ambient sounds, which a lot of people may or may not be into. If you've got any specific things you're interested in about the modular, let me know and I'll think about how I can do them. Anyway, go listen to the track. It's brilliant. I would say genius, actually.